So before we get into the fun stuff, I really need to set the stage. Because if I've learned anything over the past few years is context is very important. And people have a tendency to take little bits and pieces and put them together ways they want them to go together, and sometimes that's great and sometimes it doesn't quite work, and then you start hearing from the people that talk to the people that talk to the people that had a friend that watched the UL online presentation, and all of a sudden it doesn't make sense anymore. So that's what I want to do in this first part. So big picture things, so we can go through these quickly so we can get to the tactical considerations. Fires are down by more than half since the 1970s. So when we have a system that is completely built on gaining experience, that's that much less of a chance to have experience. So what we need to do is use all the information we can through education to make sure that when you do have the opportunity to gain experience, that you really make that experience count, and you make it so that when you and your crew and your department are on the same page, you can all discuss your experiences on a level playing ground and you can learn from each other, because none of us are going to enough fires to put all this together. Really important. And there you go. You can't go to enough fires to put it all together. I don't care if you're at the busiest department, in the busiest station, down to a lot of places I've presented to recently, they had shifts at stations that haven't been to a fire in more than a year. Both ends of the spectrum. Let's say you went to 10 fires last month. 10 fires last month I would consider a pretty heavy fire load. Some of them were in single-family houses, some of them were in townhouses, some might have been in garden apartments, some were in high-rises, some started in the kitchen, some started in the bedroom. Some you got there at 4 minutes, some you got there at 6 minutes. Sometimes the door was open, sometimes the door was closed. There's a lot of variables, right? Absolutely. But we can start boiling all these things down to some basic principles that are going to hold to every fire ground you go to. So you can start making decisions with intelligent thoughts about what's going on and start putting those pieces together, get the big picture, start learning, start gaining experience, and starting becoming a better firefighter. I love the saying that we've got firefighters that have 20 years on the job, but they got 1 year of experience 20 times. Because we keep repeating the same stuff and over and over and over again. 1% of your basic training is on fire behavior, if you're lucky. So when all you got was, when you went through the recruit school, was this is conduction, convection, radiation, this stuff's boring, let's go ahead and move on and do something else, let's go spend a week tying ropes and knots. Was it because they don't think you need to know that stuff? I don't think it is. I think the gap is because there wasn't good stuff there to tie to the fire ground. When you start presenting conduction as you hold one end of a brass pipe and you heat the other end, and all of a sudden you can feel heat at the other end of the pipe as explaining the why conduction is important to you, how the hell do you apply that to your job? We're finally getting to the point where we're starting to take some of those fundamental concepts and apply them to ways where you can actually see it and experience it, and it's the difference between life and death on the fire ground. That's where that understanding needs to be. If we're not making the connection from education to the fire ground, then we're setting ourselves up for failure, and that's not what we want to be doing. Just because you can go somewhere does not mean that you should. Looking at the history of turnout gear in SCBA from the late 70s to the early 80s, when the books transitioned from you need to know the fire, you need to know the building, you need to know some of the science that's going on, to, well, we can protect you from smoke. We can protect you from heat. So you don't need to know about those things anymore. What you do need to know is how to get your gear on and off very quickly. So we're going to start teaching you how to get your gear on and off, and not necessarily how your gear works, how it protects you, because it is not going to allow you to go everywhere. Even if the gear survives, maybe the person inside of it doesn't. It's kind of important to you. So we're going to start talking about using turnout gear as a safety factor, as opposed to constantly trying to push that gray area until you get to the point where you burn up your helmet a little bit. Well, that wasn't far enough. We can go a little bit further. Then you get some second-degree burns, get a couple blisters. That wasn't quite far enough. When does it stop? When do you stop pushing the line? And do you really understand what's going on around you to know where you are in that gray area at all? It's a very difficult question to answer. If you know why, you can be a thinking firefighter and not a robot. The biggest thing in my mind of what we're trying to do with this knowledge that we're trying to make available to you and make you understand. You're experiencing these things every day, but can we make it make sense to you? If you can start understanding why things are happening, you start gaining better experience. If you just train your people to follow SOPs to the letter and pay no attention to what's going on in front of them whatsoever, or don't provide them the information to actually make decisions on what's in front of them as it's happening, and provide that flexibility for them to operate with what needs to be done, and all they know is how, we're setting our people up to fail. We don't want to be doing that. We can do a lot better. And when you know why, and all of a sudden you've got intelligent firefighters making intelligent decisions, all of a sudden those hows are going to start getting better too. To be a thinking firefighter, you have to have knowledge and not beliefs. Worst thing out there that's plagued us for a long time is because that's the way we've always done it. You want to talk about shutting down a curious firefighter really quick. If that's the best answer we can provide to our people, what are we doing? Experience and knowledge have to coexist. It's not one or the other. They're not competing against each other. They have to coexist. We have to make that experience count. And we make that experience count with some knowledge. And we gain that knowledge by collectively working together to answer the questions that you have about your job. Need to know how with the why. I can sit here all day and can make you an expert on fire dynamics. But if you can't get a hose line to where you need to get a hose line, all of a sudden it's not going to matter anymore. If you look at the building and you make your decision on what hose line you're going to need, and it takes you 6 minutes to get water to your nozzle to start doing anything, things are changing. You're going to have to start predicting 10 minutes ahead because it takes you 6 minutes to get a hose line on the ground. All of these things are very important and go together, coexist very much. If you hear, never ventilate, never go inside, always throw water from the outside, never go over a basement fire, never vertically ventilate, everything you did in the past is wrong, clearly you're not listening. And if you heard any of this stuff before you got in this room, whoever you heard it from wasn't listening. We're just going to make you smarter at what you choose to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're going to pick that. But if you're going to put yourself in any position, I want you to have front-loaded to know exactly what's going on and exactly why you're choosing what you're choosing. This is what I want you to hear. This is what I want you to be thinking. It's rare that always and never apply. If you think I'm going to give you these tactical considerations, they're all going to be absolutes, that's part of our problem, folks. Everybody wants one answer. Everybody wants to show up and do the same thing every time and the fire goes out and everybody can high five. And then all of a sudden you get thrown a little bit of a curveball and things go to hell. Why'd that happen? Oh, freak thing, fireball. Working with New York City quite a bit, that became an explanation that I started hearing on several occasions. What the hell's a fireball? That became an excuse as to why things happen. They've had recent fires where it's taken in excess of 30 minutes or more to get water on the fire. And I'm going to pick on FDNY a little bit because they are, you want to talk about being progressive with this research stuff? Here's an 11,000 member department that's writing ventilation bulletins, that's writing search bulletins, that's tweaking their private dwelling operations. You want to talk about a department that's building on experience. There's nothing more exciting than going to an FDNY staff chiefs meeting, having a conversation with probably 1,000 years of experience in the room, and you start talking about some minor things, and all of a sudden you see light bulbs just popping all over the room. And they all have names for all their fires. Oh, that's what happened at the Scalfani fire. That's what happened in Prospect Place. That's what happened in all these other places. Because when you can understand what's going on, all of a sudden stuff like that starts to make sense. And the answer fireball goes out of the reasons why something happened. It's all good stuff. That's why we do that. Everybody thinks this is like, oh my God, you're telling me to coordinate my attack. This is completely new stuff. Most of this isn't new at all. It's just explaining it in a slightly different way so you understand the why a little bit better. Most of what I'm going to put up here is reinforcing stuff that you already do. But if I can take you as a leader in your department, an instructor in your department, an officer in your department, and you now have that piece of knowledge where the other members in your department can look to you for answers, because not only are you going to show them the how, you're going to tell them the why. That's pretty powerful when you start talking about establishing good trends and good morale in the fire department. That could work in my department if we train on it. Shouldn't be taking a lot of this stuff and start trying it tomorrow on the fire ground. Some of it maybe, most of it no. If everyone's not on the same page and training on something before it gets implemented on the fire ground, that could be a recipe for bad things to happen as well. And that's no surprise. We do that with technology all the time. Hey, here's a new PPV fan. Go figure it out on somebody's worst day. Use this information to be more educated and aggressive than ever to do the things that you want to do anyway. To put the fire out faster and more efficiently. To have less chance of getting hurt or killed. To save the victims and protect ourselves. That's all this is. If you know what you're doing, you can move faster. If you move faster because you know what's going on and you know when to move fast and you know when to slow down, that's better for who you're showing up to. And ultimately, the science of firefighting isn't that complicated. We're going to talk about a few basic things like gases go from hot to cold, shocker. Stuff flows from a higher pressure to a lower pressure, surprise. But it's putting it in context that I think is really going to start to make some things come together. So here we go.